younger brothers, sisters, and elder brothers, sisters. Indeed, I feel very happy mixing with people, and particularly young people. When I, sit with old people, then sometimes I feel, you go first, me go first. Then when I mixing with young people, 85-year-old person mentally sometimes feel younger. So I'm very happy, very enjoy meeting with you. Then time always moving. So no force can stop that. Time moving, changing, it's nature. Now the question is whether we utilize time properly or not. And for that, it's the past, we can't do anything. But the future depends on present. So we can make opportunity to create future more peaceful, more happy, or difficult future. Now, in that respect, the generation of 21st century, you are the key sort of people who create this century, more happier century or difficult century. So the generation of 21st century, you have the opportunity and also responsibility. And also the remaining 21st century, like me, we won't see, but you have to live. So therefore, it is your own interest to try to have happier century. So the generation of 21st century is very, very important. So please, these young brothers, sisters, please think more seriously how to build happy world, happy century. Because, a lot of problems which we are experiencing and seeing, including war, these are human creation. So, since these problems, many problems, human-created problems, so logically, we also have the ability to eliminate these problems. If not entirely, certainly we can reduce these problems. So, the young human being, you have a very good opportunity and also moral responsibility to create happier world. So now, like these violence, war, mainly creation of anger and also selfish and narrow-minded. If we create on this world a concept of oneness of human being, no basis of we and they, then you see these such as sort of cruelty and war, too much based on we and they. And that also finally concept of I, we, lacking a sense of oneness of 7 billion human beings. If we consider entire 7 billion human beings as human brothers, sisters, then you see no basis to kill each other, to bully each other. Therefore, now it is very important we have to develop sense of oneness of human being. And then logically, you see, human being are social animal. And then any social animal, they have the sense of concern about their own community, because their own life very much depends on the community. So ancient time, community, you see, his or her own area, firstly family, then small community. Now today's world, the reality, the Eastern world depend on Western world, all this technology, all this sort of modern science, all these come from West. We very much rely on them. Then also for economy, these things, West also is in need, depend on the East, and similarly South and the North. So from that, judging that reality, then today's human community seems entire 7 billion human beings is one human community. So we Buddhists usually, you see, recite this is some sort of prayer, entire sentient being, and we describe mother sentient being. And then also you see the other religion, like Judeo-Christian tradition and Muslim, those theistic religion who believe God. So from that viewpoint also you see entire world created by one God. So that God, something like our Father. So all 7 billion human beings are children of one Father, God. So, judging from that, entire 7 billion human beings are brothers, sisters. So, these theistic religion, except Creator God, very powerful. And God, everybody, you see, consider God infinite love. So our Father, one God, is infinite love. So we all 7 billion human beings are children of that God. So if you think seriously, how can human beings kill each other, bully each other? We have to live side by side with spirit of brotherhood, sisterhood. Then, as I briefly mentioned, according to non-theistic religion, or Sangha, or one part of Sangha, no concept of creator. And then Jainism, no concept of creator. And then Buddhism, no concept of creator. But then the main sort of message is ahimsa and karuna. So in this country, over 3,000 years, the concept of ahimsa and karuna. So when you seriously practice ahimsa, there is no basis to attack, to harm other. So no basis of war, violence. And all these ahimsa concept related with karuna. So when you sort of follow the teaching of these ancient Indian teachers, ahimsa and karuna, then automatically you see that person become very peaceful, very compassionate, and a sensible person. I think India, comparatively today, India most peaceful. And then the religious harmony, because of ahimsa, concept of ahimsa, different religious tradition, homegrown different religion, and religion come from outside. That's mainly Judeo-Christian and Islam and Zoroastrian. These come from outside. But you see, remain here, peaceful, and religious harmony in this country, truly, really remarkable. So in our neighbor country, due to different religious faith killing each other, in this country, religious harmony, marvelous. So therefore, India, the 1,000-year-old concept of ahimsa and karuna is very much relevant to today's world. And then, again, India's tradition, secular way. You see, whether believer or non-believer, believe this religion or that religion, is personal matter. As a human being, you see, we need practice of ahimsa and karuna. So among the Egyptian civilization, Chinese civilization, Indus Valley's civilization, which is India's original. So, you see, this Indus Valley's civilization, I think the main sort of concept, as I mentioned earlier, non-violence and compassion. And that also, you see, according secular way, then today it's really very much relevant to today's world. Since the secular way approach these things, so through education, not through prayer, not through religious belief. Religious belief is individual matter, individual business. But this concept of peace, compassion is relevant to entire humanity. So now, I often used to express the 1,000-year-old India's tradition, ahimsa, karuna, through education. Firstly, in this country, should revive in education field. Not only education which exists today is very much oriented about material value. Basically, existing modern education comes from West. So in the West, Judeo-Christian tradition, so there are sort of, whenever some problem or some difficult phase, just pray God, God, God. No sort of education or knowledge how to tackle our emotion, our mind. So now this country, before Buddha, before Mahavira, already have the concept of ahimsa and compassion, karuna. So now, of course now a lot of people here, so I may mention, I have 4 sort of commitment or responsibility. Number 1, I consider I am just one human being on this planet. So now even scientists say basic human nature is more compassionate because we are a social animal. Any social animal, they are, as I briefly mentioned, their sort of life very much depend on the community. So therefore, basic human nature is more compassionate. Now that's some scientists now thinking that way. So that should be basis we can develop compassionate human being through education. So these days I expressing in kindergarten level, the teaching or education how to take care of your physical health. So same time, we should include hygiene of emotion, hygiene of physical, hygiene of emotion. So children also, do you prefer a smile or like this kind of face? So naturally, smile, indication or expression of loving kindness. So when I was young, like you, when my teacher showing a little bit of sort of serious face, I don't like. When my teacher, make some jokes and some sort of smile, then I do not feel tiredness. If more serious face, then I watch as soon as finish that lesson, I feel much happier. I prefer like that. So therefore, young children, since we love smile, warm-heartedness, so now education should include about hygiene of emotion and how to create happy mind, peaceful mind. So my number 1 commitment is try to create 7 billion human beings, more compassionate human beings. For individual physical health also, now these days some scientists also now mention peace of mind, very important for healthy, for health, healthy body, and because of longevity survey, long life. So therefore, now not talking about next life, not talking about Buddha or God or heaven, simply how to be happier human being, human society. So through education, we should include education about our emotion, how to tackle anger, fear, jealousy. These emotions are destroyer of peace of mind and eventually also destroy our health. Therefore, you see, in our education should include more, also the explanation, more more education about our emotion, about our mind. In that respect, in this country, very, very rich material about mind, emotion. Usually I describe something like map of emotion. Once we fully understand or knowledge, then much easier to tackle these emotions as a secular way. So these things mentioned in religious text. Now here you see, according to my own little experience, a lot of explanation in these Buddhist texts about psychology. But then this should consider as an academic subject, not a religious subject, according to Indian tradition, secular way. So, number one, my commitment is try to promote compassionate mind or loving kindness, loving kindness through education in the whole world. As I am one person out of 7 billion human beings, wherever I go, I always talk these things. Number one. Number two, my commitment is try to promote religious harmony, as I mentioned earlier. I have full confidence. Religious harmony is very possible. This country, as I mentioned earlier, all world religious traditions live together. And mutual respect. And in some cases, mutual learning. I often use mentioning the Parsi community in Bombay, less than 100,000. They are Zoroastrian. They used to come from outside India and then settled in Bombay. They carry some fire puja or something. In big city, over a million, I think several million Christian, Hindu, Muslim, less than 100,000 population, Parsi, very happily, no fear. So, that's one example, this country. I think religious harmony is truly exist over 1,000 years. So, I have full conviction religious harmony is very possible. So my number two commitment, wherever I go, I always try to share with people all religion, in spite different philosophy, different teacher at different time, but all carry message of love. and with that, forgiveness, tolerance, self-discipline. So all major religions inspired in different philosophy, the main message is same. Therefore, and that also is logically, all these religions, except you see according to the creator, then different. Otherwise, all these religions, human created. So human naturally, human good quality, best quality is human love. So all religion which essentially created by human being, they carry the concept of loving kindness, taking care of other, not harming other. So that all religion of human being carry this message. And then, you see, mentioned in different philosophy, it is necessary according different people, different mental disposition, even if in different geography, different climate, you need different way of approach. The goal, aim is same, loving kindness, compassion, like that. So religious harmony, very possible. Otherwise, it is just India's neighbor, Afghanistan, and then the Arab world, in the name of religion, killing each other, unthinkable, really. So therefore, the religious harmony, very important. So it is possible to create religious harmony. India is the example. Okay. Then, number 3 commitment, I am Tibetan. Tibetan people trust me. So I have moral responsibility to think about their future. So political matter, now already I retired since 2001. I completely retired from political responsibility. Then we already have elected political leadership. Then, regarding Tibet, ecology. Now global warming really become more serious. So many experts about ecology, they really warning us. So Tibet case, according to some Indian ecologists, they say the Tibet high altitude and dry climate. So, like ecology, these once damaged, it takes longer time to recover. So, ecology condition in Tibet is quite delicate. So, I often use expressing the concerned people there, and particularly Chinese, including Chinese business people. See, exploitation about the nature resources there. This should take care. Yes, it is worthwhile to use nature resources, but forest, these things, they should pay more attention. This is my regarding Tibet. And then most important is Tibetan knowledge. From childhood, I study these texts which originally translated from Sanskrit. So, when I was like you, I quite lazy. Then you see, when you see, I the counting. Now, when holiday come, so the next day holiday, then today I feel very happy. I think you also have same feeling, isn't it? So, I'm quite lazy, but those subjects which I learned, they also the traditional way to study these things. Firstly, root text, learn by heart, memorize. Few hundred pages, memorize. Then explain each word according commentary, mainly Indian masters' commentary. Then we extensively use debate because Shantarakshita, who are introducing Buddhism in Tibet in 8th century, he himself, great logician. So therefore, you see, he introduced Buddha Dharma in Tibet according Nalanda tradition, his style. Logical approach is very essential. So now the Tibetan, also the knowledge, not only just prayer or religious belief, religious or ritual, but logic and philosophy. The Nalanda philosophy now very much, you see, the similar quantum physics. Quantum physics half. The Nalanda sort of also now quantum physicists, you see, they already develop things outside, external things does not exist as appears. If you analyze, nothing you can find. So quite similar, the Chitta Mantra's concept, external thing does not exist, only mental creations already. Like that, mental projection. Then, so quantum physicists, they say there is huge gap, appearance and reality. The reality does not exist as appears. This is exactly the Nalanda philosopher, exactly as he mentioned these things. So I want to share with young brothers, sisters, when I listen, quantum physicist, naturally, I, with respect and humbly, listen their explanation. Meantime, in my mind, I feel I know much better. Because we study years about the Nalanda tradition, Chitta Mantra philosophy, as well as Madhyamaka philosophy. Within Madhyamaka, there are some Madhyamaka philosophers also, you see, accept the Chitta Mantras, mind-only school thought. And then the Prasankika, Madhyamaka, wonderful. Now, the similar quantum physics, nothing exists as appears. So, mention these things because our destructive emotion, very much based on appearances. You convince things exist as appears, and some nice thing, attachment, some negative thing, anger. So now some student in China about quantum physics, now they express, so once they believe nothing exists as appears, that automatically reduce the grasping something independent existence there. That's the basis of all these negative emotion. So therefore, the quantum physics, not only external thing, but observer also, you see, through centuries investigation, where is I? that's observer. So there is no independent I. Now here, differences, Atma theory and Anatma theory, like that. So therefore, Tibetan tradition, some Chinese professors who notice these things, they express Tibetan Buddhism is true lineage of a Nalanda tradition, and that tradition is very scientific religion. Some Chinese professors, express that way. So therefore, the Tibetan knowledge, I think, very useful to preserve. So it can make, I think, certain contribution regarding our sort of knowledge about inner world. Then that's mainly regarding the Tibet, the Kasota. And then political matter, as I mentioned earlier already, we have all elected political leadership. And since 74, according Pandit Nehru's advice, and also according our own experience, then we are not seeking independence or separation from China. We very much sort of willing to remain within the People's Republic of China. And then important is Tibetan knowledge must preserve, and including Tibetan language should be preserved. And when we say Tibet, in 1914 similar convention, we say make distinction, inner Tibet, outer Tibet. So independence for Tibet, outer Tibet. Inner Tibet, Amdo, Kham, these are, they consider inner Tibet as a part of China. So if we only concern outer Tibet, then around less than 2 millions. Then including the outer Tibet, inner Tibet, Kham, Amdo, then altogether about 6 to 7 millions. So we are sort of concerned all those Tibetan, which Chinese constitution recognized as a Tibetan sort of race, should have same right to preserve their 1,000-year-old knowledge and including that language. So that's political field. We are not seeking independence, but we should preserve Tibetan ecology and rich Tibetan culture. Now today, I think ancient Nalanda knowledge, now in India, all these knowledge disappear. So only among Tibetan, we still kept all these Nalanda thought, Nalanda knowledge about psychology, about logic, about, these like quantum physics, these things. We still, in our tradition, very much alive and also very useful to tackle our emotion. So these knowledge, in order to keep peace of mind, not just a blind faith, but through analytical meditation. What's the value of anger? What's the value of selfish? Ultimately, all these negative emotions related with selfish. So the great master like Shantadeva, they are writing Kasa, Shinju Kasa.
A guide to the Bodhisattva way of life.
Really wonderful to tackle self-centered attitude and create altruism. So thinking other actually benefit yourself maximum way. So since many years I use the word we are selfish as a human being. Whole evolution come with take care oneself, including animals. But now since we have this human brain, so our selfish should be wise selfish rather than foolish selfish. So wise selfish means since we are social animal, our individual life depends on the community. So take care maximum way about others' well-being. That's the best way to fulfill your selfish interest. Like that. So, firstly, Shanta Rakshita introduced Buddha Dharma in Tibet in 8th century. And he himself logician. So, they all sort of approach anything. So all the first our reaction is why. The sort of also the question mark, why? Even Buddha's own word, why he taught that. So some Nalendra master rejected some Buddha's own teaching. If you accept this literally, it goes against reason. So we must reject. Like Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, these clearly mentioned that. So Buddha himself, I think, allowed us, all my follower, monks, scholars, should not accept my teaching out of faith, but rather thorough investigation and experiment. So many Nalendra masters exactly follow that way. So, as I mentioned earlier, Nalendra tradition, Buddhist tradition, non-tradition, much sort of emphasis on logical approach. So, Buddhism as Chinese, as I mentioned earlier, described as a scientific religion. And my own experience, around, I think about 40 years, I have serious discussion with modern scientists. Eventually, it become very useful to Mizu learning. We also learn something from scientific sort of finding. And then they also, very much appreciate about our knowledge, about mind, about how to tackle these destructive emotions like that. So that's regarding Tibet. And then my latest commitment is try to revival of ancient Indian knowledge about ahimsa, karuna, and the vipassana, analytical meditation. This is India's tradition. Now modern India, I think, not sufficient to pay attention about this knowledge. Your modern Indian very much sort of follow the materialistic education. Now time come, you should pay more attention about ancient Indian knowledge, about mind, about emotion. Then, logically, India is the only nation who can combine modern education that oriented about material value and science and technology, very useful. And then, meantime, ancient Indian knowledge tackle our mind to build inner strength or inner value. So only India can combine ancient yoga knowledge and modern knowledge combined. modern knowledge bring us physical comfort. Ancient Indian knowledge bring us mental comfort. That's, I think, in whether believer or non-believer, secular way. So I usually make distinction. These, I think I already mentioned, you see, these knowledge we should consider as an academic knowledge, not religious knowledge, although come from religious text. But we should consider these are secular way and about the academic subject. So I'm trying to revival of ancient Indian knowledge, India, the young Indian. Now you should pay more attention about ancient Indian knowledge about mind, or ahimsa, or karuna, these things. The young Indian now should pay more attention and study. So the secular education, you should include education about mind, as I mentioned earlier, from childhood, hygiene of emotion, these things. So that's why the latest my commitment. I really found number of Indian scholars, they really showing interest about my commitment, revival of these ancient Indian knowledge and combine ancient knowledge, modern knowledge, like that. Then India can make a significant contribution regarding world peace, peace through inner peace, like that. So now the text. Now today I am going to speak something about 8 verses on a great Tibetan, as a monk and also scholar. The Atishas was a disciple, and Kasadi, Potowa, Kadam Kuchisum, Potowa, and Potowa, the Pesalomari, Langshani, that they are the language tango Saturday, Congregation.
So the text that we are going to go through was written by a disciple of one of the disciples of the Potowa, who was in turn a disciple of Master Atisha Dipankara Srijana, who came to Tibet. And this text was written by a disciple who was a disciple of Potowa. A disciple of Potowa. And so regarding the disciple of Potowa, there were the 2 disciples mainly who were called Langshani.
Oh, Sharawata, Langshani.
And so these 2 disciples were Sharawa and then Langri Thangpa. So this text was written by Master Langri Thangpa.
So he wrote these 8 verses. He himself is a great practitioner of altruism. So he wrote this very short, something like prayer or some text. So I myself, since very young age, I recite these 8 verses every day. So this is quite short and very meaningful. Now, with a determination to achieve the highest aim for the benefit of all sentient beings, which surpass even the wish-fulfilling germ. May I hold them dear at all times. Through analytical meditation, see, all sort of happiness, and including long life and physical health, very much depend our attitude towards other. So just think oneself, then all these negative things, negative emotions, you see, come. Think more about others. You get for immediate, also peaceful mind. And then next life, no question, you practice altruism, think other or more. And then 100% sure your next life will be a human being and a happy life. Then practice that. So every moment your action motivated altruism, then every sort of karma action become positive. So 젊은이들이 소야들이 semji tekso lamji shungshinde labjin jeba namji shida ten chonyi kono sinju zedawo ramjawa keso debe sunamder tedashene kesa bawo nam rinjisipto tudum tidunzi nanjaro ngeja nyamne tedashe tanzoyji shangsalo soyata derza shivuji nanshimurduwa panyin shabu shivuji desha semji sangbu sayatiyo.
So, as Master Tsongkhapa has said, this altruistic spirit of enlightenment is like the yardstick of the great vehicle tradition, and it is also the basis of all the great bodhisattva practices. And therefore, the practitioners, bodhisattvas, make this practice of bodhicitta their principal practice. So this shows how great the altruism and concerning with the concern for the well-being of all other sentient beings is very important and significant.
Then may I hold them dear at all times. Now, this is also related with ultimate reality. Now, may I hold, where is I? Beside this body and mind and voice, where is I? So if we investigate, we can't find. Recently, I met among the sort of audience one old lady. She's seeking some kind of blessing from me because her mind so too much sort of anxiety or sort of disturbed. Then I ask her, where is self? Where is I? Where is you? She responds, here, I here. Then I ask, round or square? She answered, round. So, investigate where is I. We cannot sort of find the real sort of basis of I. So, the anattama theory is essentially, ultimately, we cannot find, even if it's the quantum physics, as like external thing. Observer himself or herself, investigate beside this body, mind, a voice, nothing we can pinpoint. So, as the Kasa Chandakirti, the daughter was saying, and Tanam Shingde, Namse Shepe, Namdu Yuva Mayish, Tele Shandu Juba, Jigzen Chagwekone, Yava Yin, so that did it. Then a thousand Tanya to Chagwekone, the Yara Sash Mado, Kopaka thousand Zani, Sensing Mercy, just drawing him to her.
And so if you try to search for your true identity, you cannot find anything that you can actually pinpoint as being yourself. You cannot find this I that you usually hold on to be existing as something concrete or something like that. As Master Chandrakirti has said, when you actually analyze through the sevenfold reasoning, like analyzing a chariot, you will not be able to find anything that you actually can pinpoint as being the I, the self. But despite that, you do exist. The I or the person does exist merely by way of convention. The worldly convention. And so we should understand that things are merely designated and that they are known by worldly conventions.
가다 시루는 차정이 미쳐버다 참이 시절을 미시시, 봐. 다 차파셀 주고 차정고 샤좀 누가. 다 작별권에 딱좀 샤면 천 누가.
And so, as we say, logically, we cannot actually have anything that is a standalone kind of an entity. Whatever there is, I mean, there is always some kind of a part. We can talk about a whole. When we talk about a whole, there's always the constituent factors that make up the whole. And so when you try to search for the identity of the things, you need to actually dissect the thing into its parts and further into the subparts and so forth. When you do this, then there's nothing that you can actually find as being this or that.
Then, whenever I interact with someone, may I view myself as the lowest amongst them. And from that very depths of my heart, respectfully hold others as superior. So in order to tackle self-centered attitude, using these practice, very, very helpful. And the reality, if the circumstances, if someone you remain humble, sincerely. Then if someone take advantage, then analyze whether let the other take advantage and what result, what consequences, analyze. Then if circumstances, and through analytical meditation, analyze, then eventually, you see the kasota, kanda, the other person, himself or herself, you see, may get more suffering, more committed negative karma. Then, according to their circumstances, if necessary, to countermeasure, to stop their wrongdoing, like that. Then in all my deeds, may I prove into my mind, and as soon as mental and emotional affliction arise, as they endanger myself and others, may I strongly confront them and avert them. So as I already mentioned, the analytical meditation, we should develop clear understanding what kind of emotion is harmful, what kind of emotion is useful. Then everyone, you see, carrying themselves. So all this negative emotion is ultimate destruction, the destroyer of your own happiness, your own peace of mind, like that, as I already mentioned. When I see beings of unpleasant character, oppressed by strong negativity and suffering, may I hold them dear, for they are rare to find, as I have discovered a jewel, a treasure. rāngshīngi bēsīm jīne tīgdū chākbu nān tōngsi, rāngshī tērdā chāba shīngi yawar kāwē jīnzī shōs. So as a result of practice of altruism, then it's genuine concern of our so-called enemy, troublemaker. That sense of concern is genuine compassion. A sense of concern of your own friend is more mixed with attachment. So the proper way to test your own genuine compassion, really genuine or not, is to look towards your enemy. The genuine sense of concern of their well-being, that is genuine compassion. Okay. So, as Shantadawa say, enemy who create trouble for you is best teacher. It's true, like that. When others, out of jealousy, treat me wrongly with abuse, slander, and scorn, may I take them myself, the defeat, and offer to others the victory. Wonderful. Few years ago, you did some interpret some sort of locality.
2008.
2008. Some people in Lhasa start demonstration, and then suppression. So at that time, I visualized some of those Chinese officials who making that kind of decision. I visualize and take their anger, their fear, take myself. Give them forgiveness or tolerance and compassion, that kind of sort of visualization. So no help to actual the situation, but it immense help to keep peace of mind, like that. So then, as a sort of practitioner, altruism, then whole phenomena appears something very positive. Too much self-centered sort of thinking, then whole phenomena appears something negative, and fear, distrust, suspicion. So sometimes I, as a practitioner of altruism, now at least I think 50 years, more than 50 years, with a combination of understanding of Shunyata, about now 60 years, 70 years. So sometimes when I saw some wrathful deity, I feel a little strange to whom they are wrathful sort of face. All phenomena, all sort of sentient being, very dear. 세상에 다 잡고도 스탠드를 되지, 내디 다그들이 껴봐 탐지지 장을 좋아 대신이다네. 바로 대를 저도 벌써인지 다들 설명나서 가을이 드시도와. 쉬울 수 있는 거 처음에 세상에 초유 개부 시대도 되지. 다 가을이 초기 나서서 저는데 지 계속이 전주전주치기.
So when I see these wrathful paintings of wrathful deities, I sometimes think, to whom actually are they showing their wrath? In fact, when I see these portraits of the wrathful deities, I also feel that what Master Shantideva has prayed is actually true, which says in the third chapter, at the end of third chapter, today I called in front of the protectors, the Buddhas, and I call upon all sentient beings as my guests for the ultimate realization of Buddhahood, and in the meantime also for the temporary benefit within the existential cyclic existence. And therefore, with this prayer, I actually pray that may the gods and non-gods, demigods and so forth, be joyful.
When I give some tantric sort of varsity kasa initiation, usually at the beginning, you see some part varsity expel all negative forces. Since now some few years, I no longer practice that. There's nothing. Pia, tada keksin, pia kakem dua.
So in this kind of tantric rituals, when we come to the point of doing this called ritual, to this where we imagine to dispel or drive away the so-called evil forces, I actually think that there's nobody, no sentient being whom we could call as being our enemies or adversaries. Everyone is our friends.
신수사 자기 sen. 된대기 비게다 낙섬 내수 장대기 닝제의 유르마도 그게 짧게 유켜는 말와 초 당불안을 거 인제.
So in fact, these so-called evil beings whom we think of driving away during these kind of ceremonies are our objects of compassion, and therefore we should not think of them as some kind of a adversary who are harming us or anything like that, but be compassionate towards them.
In brief, may I offer benefit and joy to all my mothers, both directly and indirectly. May I quietly take upon myself all hurts and pains of my mother. That may all this remain undefiled by the stains of 8 mundane concerns, and may I recognize all this as illusion, devoid of
clinging,
be released from bondage. That at the beginning, I or that, now investigate where is I. It is more easier. 간사 다음에 처지 다음에 동니 참여관에 샤베는 차라스게 아마도 이네 동시 수행원에 간사 다음에 또서 로를 차 덱서스도가 I said 하잖아 레랑 수스도 저자가 이네 나의 천시 지금 나를 신이 주고 되면서 나의 천시 고를 있음 아니 부모가서 아니 간사 천시를 샤서로 다소 낭배 된주 랑신 생에게 낭배 좀더 삼을로게 나의 천시 이 남시대 갈래요미야래 아니 가셔게도 왜 우토니 근신남시 사시기야래 남시 소게 아니 가다 정유 사셔네 천시 이 남시 세네 가다 나선 조주스 고도 삼천거로 다디 켜는 야만 시자네 아니 합 갈래지 동상으로 시작도가 다디 domde ene mingi tani yawang yeba sammato ngoni tu tene yamar saje inde lolia shandamenta chi lo debuji gachi odere tatisha
So when we, with regard to this last verse, when you come to say, may I recognize all things as like illusion and so forth, you should try to relate this verse with the analysis into who you are. As I have already explained with regard, in relation to verse number 2, when we say, whenever I interact with somebody, you should do analysis of who you are and try to see whether you can find this so-called I or me, within this psychophysical, from within this psychophysical aggregate or not. And so when you do this kind of analysis, we actually try, what we try to gain insight into is twofold. One is what is called the selflessness of persons or beings, and selflessness of phenomena. And between these two, selflessness of phenomena, the selflessness of person and phenomena, it's easier to gain insight into the selflessness of person. But then, within the Buddhist philosophical tradition, there are those schools who kind of assert that there must be something that we can actually point our finger at, that we can actually identify as the true nature or the true identity of a person as such. And therefore, they kind of assert that within from amongst the psychophysical aggregates, the 5 aggregates as we call them, what can actually be called identified as the true identity of a being or a person is the mental consciousness. And then within that, within that, there's some schools like Chittamatrins kind of desperately assert a so-called alaya vijnana, foundational consciousness, as being the true identity of a person or a being. And then there are those of the Madhyamaka philosophical tradition, followers of Madhyamaka philosophical tradition, particularly the Savatantrika Madhyamakas, who say that the 6th consciousness, the 6th mind, is the true identity of a person. But even though they do assert such things like the alaya vijnana or the 6th consciousness as being the true identity of a person, when you actually put these two under the lens of critical analysis, you will not be able to find anything as being the person as such. Whether it's alaya vijnana or the 6th consciousness, nothing can be found. When you do that kind of analysis, critical analysis, to look into the nature of the I or the person, what you actually get at is that this empty nature of yourself, and there is this sense of we call a vacuity that you may get into. And then we call what you actually can come to conclusion is a person yourself. When you analyze yourself, you cannot actually find anything that you can actually pinpoint as being your identity as such from amongst the 5 psychophysical aggregates. Nothing can be found as being the person as such. And therefore, what you actually can conclude is that this me or the I is merely designated. That it's called merely designated by way of worldly convention and nothing else.
So these practice actually is a tackle also emotion, destructive emotion. Firstly, self-centered, selfish is the key factor, key sort of factor. All those destructive emotions come. For that, antidote is bodhicitta, altruism. Then another sort of wrong view, everything exists as appears. Antidote of that, nothing independently exists. All are just mere disconnected. So that analytical meditation about shunyata is the antidote of tenzing.
Yes. So the understanding that things have no independent existence, that they don't exist the way they appear to us, is the kind of counterforce or the antidote to this grasping or clinking at some kind of a concrete self.
So my daily practice, mainly these two things, bodhicitta and analytical meditation about shunyata, immense help in order to keep peace of mind. And when come across some problems, so these two practice really immense benefit. So thank you. So I really appreciate you give me this opportunity, you organize this opportunity. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. Your Holiness, there are some questions from the students already.
Okay.
What should we as students practice first, compassion or wisdom?
I think wisdom you need more study. So I think gradually come. Remain more warm-hearted person. So that's practice of altruism. So firstly, I think you should practice 1,000-year-old India's tradition, ahimsa, karuna. Next.
How do you view yourself? How do you view yourself?
Just a human being, one amdo human being.
How do you handle exam pressure?
What?
How do we handle exam pressure?
Kasa. When I carry some also the examination, the finally Kishi's examination. Yes, little also anxiety.
Nervousness.
But it's basically, I think 13 years I study. And then when you see the date of my examination finalized, then I put more effort for study. So not much not much worry. Okay.
How can we as a student attain eternal peace and also can excel in our academics both at the same time?
가르쳐서 I think again altruism, the very purpose of your education, study, is serving to other, largely serving to humanity. And then you get more enthusiasm or more effort. No sort of feeling of tiredness come. It's just think yourself. And then tiredness certainly come. Okay.
As written in the second verse, it's mentioned to consider yourself lowest. But we are told not to consider yourself lower than others at home. By considering yourself low, aren't we demoralizing ourselves?
소소 현재분들이 진진글로 랑이 매물로 따야지 닝도 비어와 디몰라시아 켜내면도 와.
So there's no way you can feel demoralized when you see yourself as being the lowest, because this is done from within the practice of altruism. Considering others to be more, cherishing others over oneself alone.
Sufficient and social members demoralize you.
Yes. But if you remain selfish, then when you actually think of yourself as being the lowest, that's actually demoralizing yourself.
Amidst all the ensuing chaos in the world, which stories, moments does His Holiness revisit to instill faith in humanity again?
가서 가. As I mentioned earlier, you see, everybody wants happy life. And lack of knowledge, what is the destroyer of unhappiness? Destroyer of happiness. And what is the ultimate source of happiness? You see, these, I think, lack of knowledge, so sometimes you feel because of frustration. This is also something to the much better.
So basically, what this shows is that you lack understanding of the working of our emotions, our minds.
Okay. No, I think, please, okay. No, okay, no problem. Yes?
What could be the reasons for the prevalence of depression and anxiety among school students?
And I think you should, as I mentioned earlier, the self-centered attitude and lack of knowledge about the whole emotion system. That's the main reason. So study. I think at least the Shantadeva's book, very helpful.
Should the young preserve their traditions or embrace modern culture?
Karsa. I think, as I already mentioned, combination. The education which comes from West is no knowledge about emotion, these things. So the existing Western education, which comes from West, the certain field not sort of sufficient or not mentioned. So in that, the India's sort of 1,000-year-old tradition should Soviet.
So we should actually be able to add India's ancient knowledge.
Okay.
How important is meditation for the young today?
I think it is quite, relevant. At least in morning, the class session start. I think few moments just to remain silent and think about mind. They're quite useful.
Were your personal challenges as a teenager close to the ones we face today?
I think variety. That's also the come the merchant.
So it's difficult to say definitely as it's same because things depend on your own circumstances and your own mentality, mental disposition, and so forth.
Why is the guru important?
Oh, any shenju do and the lama the Toma Rangi do was a course. Chena and Dorijangi, Shenyan to a show, Nisho, Yanda Labo, Senja Lungishu, Tini Rudu Tola, Makende, Zewe Dangi, Joban Dan Songwa. That's Zewe Dangi the big catch.
As Master Tsongkhapa in his great treatise on the stages of the path says, someone who wishes, who wants to actually discipline others must first be able to discipline himself or herself, because there is no way without disciplining yourself first, you can actually discipline others, control others, emotions and so forth. And then when it comes to explaining about guru devotion or reliance on guru, there are 10 different criteria that are mentioned in the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara, and one of them is that of compassion, affectionate love or compassion. And so this quality is very important in a teacher.
What, according to you, is happiness?
Kasa. I think two levels. One physical level, joyfulness. At the mental level is more important. Mental level, happy, joyful. The physical pain, not much important. Not much sort of effect. Other hand, physical, very comfortable, very happy life, but mentally too much disturbances. That person is cannot call happy person. So mental level much more important.
Okay. Your Holiness, children want to know, how did you escape from Tibet?
Oh, that's a long story. Firstly, you should know, 9 years I spent with Chinese communists. And 1954, I went to China. I developed very close relations with Chairman Mao Zedong and many party members. I really admire those Communist Party members, truly dedicated, serving people. Wonderful. Then eventually, I think power spoiled them. And then people who have power, then they law, no independent law. So one of my friend, actually the late president of Israel, Kasa, Shimon Peres, he very socialist, so he very sympathetic towards Chinese in early period. Then later, one occasion I met him and I asked him, do you think now China is socialist? He immediately said, no, worst kind of capitalism. So in any way, the worst thing is no freedom, no free press. So people in China, just only one information. The party is sort of, what's it, because propaganda, like that. So then finally, even if my life is facing some danger, then I escaped. 1959, 10th of March, sort of cried, because entire Lhasa people, sort of come to Nobulinga and shouting. So then next, 10th of March till 17th, I try my best to cool down the situation, but failed. Then 17th, I decided leaving Lhasa. So the last moment, a Chinese, the local leader, asked me, they want to know the place where I stay. There are a few blocks, Nobulinga. So they they want to know the place. They should mark, and they will protect. So, when we received that letter, they either truly target or project. Do not know. The last 9 years, very difficult. Eventually, since 1956, much sort of suppression in Eastern Tibet. So, number of also the spiritual leaders and also local sort of leaders, many killed like that. So therefore, then when I received that sort of also the message, so doubt whether, so it clearly shows they're going to suppress or military action. So then, 17th morning, I decide leaving now. And also, I carry some also mysterious ways to investigation. So then all the same sort of indication should leave. Like that. Okay?
How do you overcome grief?
Karsa. Ka. Buddha also died. And Nagarjuna, all days, is dead. It is nature. The whole galaxies come and disappear. So someone is passed away. It's quite nature.
What is self-enlightenment in your view?
Kasa.
Self-enlightenment.
Ka.
Self-enlightenment.
Self-enlightenment. Actually, according to my own little experience, as I mentioned earlier, several decades I practiced Shunyata wisdom level and altruism, warm-heartedness. I feel lamngasum Johnson shedeagi. Solomon Dwajade Yaligi Vesoshto.
So through my practice over the last 70 plus years, I feel that perhaps I may be somewhere close to what is known as the path of accumulation within this 5-tiered path system. And so if we relate the 5-tiered path to the mantra of the Heart Sutra, which says Gate Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, and then Bodhiswaha. So there are 5 different paths that are called that these mantras refer to. So I feel I may be somewhere near this first Gate, which is a reference, which called is referred by the path of accumulation.
Then?
So this is the last question. Is it good to be just a normal human being, or one should be very nationalistic?
Nationalistic. I think that's also nationalistic sometimes. Ngela ngoro kandishtoga. Some busu togoyan, Radachi Gurba. Taya, me sosuta, miridi, me jumzen dembachita, tenijita, Toma Kone, Dishen, Yakata, sometimes in Yunguru.
So to be nationalistic also, you need to actually check within yourself whether this nationalistic attitude happens within a set of mind which is very narrow-minded or not, short-sighted and so forth, or not. If that is the case, then that's not a good thing to do. Whereas if you actually see the constructive nature of being nationalistic and thinking that you're the people of India or your own country, if you are able to do something for them or to protect them and so forth, is a good reason. If you see a good reason for that, then you can be nationalist, which may be considered as a constructive one.
무슨 nationalistic 전에 폐지다 지 랑쇼의 현쇼 차단되들 전에 야와 말해.
Yes. So in the practice of nationalism, if you actually tend to be kind of biased, where you hold your side to be better and then wish to overcome or destroy the other side, then that's not good.
오케이.